Welcome to the reading of Agastya, Purpose of Life, drawn from the discourses of the sacred Agastya Balipadu. Today, we will continue the topic karma and the effects of karma. Sister Sumati will start reading now.
Yeah, to continue, what is it that makes a person act? Consider what makes a person act, keeping in mind the example I just gave you about a person throwing stones. We need to observe every action that we perform in our daily life and understand the intention behind our actions. The mind is always active. Many exponents have compared the mind to a drunken monkey, and they are perfectly right. If not properly reined in, the mind can cause havoc. An uncontrolled mind, similarly, is agitated and reacts to its surroundings and commits mistakes that are unwarranted.
Yes. So we will discuss this very important point right now. So Appa is saying, what is it that makes a person act? And then he had, in the previous section, given us examples of a person throwing stones in the water. We have one person who's just doing it without thinking, and he said, giving that example, that when it is unintentional, then it does not incur karma. However, then he talks about the person who throws a rock deliberately with intention, and how what happens when the rock is thrown. Either if a stone is thrown at a rock, if the stone is brittle, it breaks. If it is though the rock is unaffected, but the intention is there to hurt the stone. So all these things tell us that there are different types of activities or actions that we perform. One is intentional, and the other is unintentional. And that which is unintentional, which does not harm another, does not incur karma. Then he also says, we must observe every action that we perform in a daily life and understand the intention behind our actions. So if we look at it, why do we do what we do every day? We are beginning to start the very first process of walking on the spiritual path, which is becoming aware. So when we become aware, okay, somebody said this to me and I responded this way. My response is an action. My response has been good, it has been kind, it has been understanding, that is different. But if my response is angry, agitated because it has affected my ego, and that creates a negative effect on the other person, then that action creates karma. So Appa is saying, look at everything that you do each day. Understand what is the intention behind what we say. Sometimes what we do, we have a group of people and we are talking to the people, and then we have something that we want to tell somebody, but we are not brave enough to tell them. So we kind of say something that is supposed to prick that person, and we are pretending that we are okay. We are doing it in a nice way, but that is also wrong, because see, outwardly we may be showing that we are good, that we are not really targeting anybody, but the intention is to hurt the other person. So intention then becomes the most important factor in accumulating karma. And then he says the mind is always active. And if you look at each one of us, our minds are always active. That's because we're constantly bombarded by the senses. The sense telephones, I'm telling you, is one of the most important thing that we use to live in this world, but it is also one of the most important tools of Maya to make us so involved in this world that we forget the real reason we are here. We forget our real divine selves. So if something happens, immediately our mind starts following it. If you start watching your thoughts, you will realize that you see something, and within a few minutes, you stop what you're doing and think back to what happened. You will realize that every thought that emanated from seeing something is connected, and it has led you somewhere else. So you're already miles away from what you saw and what you're thinking. So thoughts can actually, you know, kind of continue to create a little bit of a confusion in a mind. So an uncontrolled mind, he says, is agitated and it reacts to its surroundings. So when the mind is, we are not calm, and say, for example, I'm already a little upset one day, and then I go to work, and somebody says something which is not really negative, but because my mind is agitated, I perceive it as negative, then I react. So it's an unwarranted mistake that I'm making when I'm reacting to a person without them actually trying to hurt me or hurt my feelings. So that's what he says when he says an uncontrolled mind is agitated and reacts to its surroundings and commits mistakes that are unwarranted. So this is something we must remember in our daily life. Try to calm ourselves. So what we have in our Hindu samskara in Indian households, we get up in the morning and we listen to devotional songs, whether it's Suprabhatam or anything like that. It doesn't matter. That brings us, makes us wake up with a nice feeling, a devotional feeling. It automatically, sound has the quality to calm us down. Sound can affect us the most. So everything depends on what kind of sounds you hear when you wake up. If you're in a mountain and you're on a retreat and you wake up and it's all silence all around, and then there's just the birds and the crickets, that creates a beautiful experience, a calming effect on our mind. So we cannot do that when we are living in cities. So how can we combat that? Let's play some beautiful, soft music behind, in the background. That will completely calm us down. And the same goes for during daily life, listening to loud music. Nowadays they have modern music that is, you start listening to it, mind starts getting agitated because that is the kind of response that sound evokes. So, in order to calm ourselves, as spiritual aspirants, it's good to meditate. Meditation helps. Breathing techniques help, and also what we listen to and what we are surrounded by helps. Even watching news, limit it to a certain time each day if you really want to watch news. It's okay, but because news also has a lot of negative effects nowadays, and that can affect us all day long. So we should, look at everything that's happening around us as witnesses and try not to take it too much into our hearts, because we know the purpose of our life is to act like the divine being that we are in our thoughts, mind, and deeds, and walk on this path of righteousness and do our sadhana and finally come to the realization of what we really are. Continue, Sister Sumati.
Let us understand how actions originate. The mind is controlled by thoughts. Thoughts arise in the causal body. Thoughts are all around us. These are not our thoughts, but the thoughts of the multitude on earth. It is these thoughts, either internal or external, that function as an intoxicating drink to our minds.
Very, very, very important paragraph. First, talking to us about thoughts. Thoughts, he says, originate in our causal body. See, most of us in the modern world think, oh, it's the mind. Thought arises in the mind. No, but he says thoughts actually arise in the causal body. Why is he saying that? If you understand that we are the microcosm of the macrocosm, that means every action, every thought ever anybody had in this created world does not dissipate, it does not go away, it is there. All around us are thoughts. And what are thoughts? Thoughts are nothing but energy. So as we already know, everything around us and within us, and we are different forms of energy vibrating at different levels, intensities, right? So if thoughts all are all around us, so if we start looking at what we are seeing and what we are affected by, where we are, we will understand that these thoughts are affecting us. So you go to a particular spiritual meeting, that's why they call it satsang. Everybody is or focused on the thought of God. The singing helps us focus on the thought of God. The mantras help us focus on the thought of God. So there is a different vibration there, and that affects us and makes our own intention of becoming devotional stronger. We go to a bar, and there the thoughts are completely different. It's more baser level. So that is starting to affect us. Or we are just sitting quietly in a house doing nothing. But there are thoughts. It all depends on how your own vritti is, how your own character is. We attract that kind of thoughts which we have inherently in us. So if a person is constantly talking about or thinking about physical stuff, the grosser level, then that kind of thoughts are constantly hovering around that person. So why, recently somebody asked me a question, why is it that even if I deliberately try not to think about something in my subconscious mind, certain thoughts arise and they're so disgusting, I don't know how to get rid of it. That is because one reason, it was already brought through the causal body from different lifetimes, based on different habits and actions, repeated actions the person performed into this life. And the fact that that particular vritti is already there in that person attracts that kind of thoughts. So deliberately trying to get rid of the thoughts means every time something like that comes, think of something more beautiful, more sublime. Try to focus our mind on reading things, and very importantly, avoiding anything that will remind us of the very things that we are trying to uh, consciously avoid, which means, that is why I keep saying, we must be careful what we watch, what we read, because even in movies nowadays, unnecessary scenes are there, which are disgusting, not necessary. I mean, these are all facts of life. We all know that as adults, but children don't need to see it. We don't need to be reminded of that. We are just some scenes are included in movies just so that they can get more money on the box office, but that is not good for society. And when we watch that, however pure we are, that thought is going to try to strike us because that thought is around us. So we must, in the beginning of a spiritual journey, watch what we see, what we hear, what we read. It's so important. And thoughts are around us. So even when you're sleeping, think about all the different dreams we have. We see people we have never seen. We experience things that we have never even thought about. That is all the thoughts that are out there that are affecting us. The more divine our thoughts, the more we are consciously connecting ourselves to divine energy, the more beautiful dreams we'll have. It's only when we are progressing to that level in our spiritual life, we start seeing gods and gurus and divine beings in our dreams, and we experience what is called uh, uh, symbolic dreams, where great ideas are given to us, or some clues to something that we need to understand are given to us symbolically in our dreams. There comes a time when we start dreaming of numbers. Numbers are impressed on our mind, and the symbolical things like gold is a beautiful color, and when that appears, that shows that you're in a divine, energy level. You are connecting to that kind of energy. So always we must be careful that there are multitude of thoughts around us, and we must be careful of what we let into our mind or our body, our causal body. The same thing also applies to what we think about another person. That is why it is very important not to have negative thoughts about another person, because the more we are focusing on a person, bringing out negative thoughts about that person, whether we express it or not, even if we go and say, hello, how are you, nicely, and talk to them, they are already understanding or getting the feeling from us that there is something about us in us that does not like them. That negativity has already been built. So let us be aware of the thoughts we let out into the world, and also the thoughts we're going to let into ourselves that surround us. And that's why when somebody says, I'll pray for you, that intention is a thought. And many people praying for the same thing, for the same person, does have an effect on the person, because everything ultimately is at the level of energy. Go ahead, Sister Sumit.
Depending on the strength or the weakness of the person, the potency of thoughts, actions are performed. A person with predominantly ignorant and lazy character, with that is tamoguna, commits an act without much planning. A man with an intense character, that is a person with rajoguna, acts fast. Therefore, the sins committed by these two types of people are grave. On the other hand, a person with pure character, that is a person with sattva guna, knows how to overcome a situation and avoids making mistakes by firmly controlling his thought process that leads to actions. In short, it is best to use discrimination when reacting to any event. Discrimination is possible only if you have good samskaras and persevere in the path of righteousness. One effective way to develop is to start meditation.
Now, what is Appa talking about? Appa is talking about, in Hinduism, you know, our ancient rishis have very clearly classified three different types of vrittis, or the characteristics of human beings. One is tamoguna, another is rajoguna, and the other is sattvaguna. Now, tamoguna is basic, and all of us have a combination of these three in each one of us. However, the intent, or the intensity, or the effect of what we do depends on with one guna which is more predominant than the others. So most of us have all the three, but one guna is always more predominant than the others. So what are the three gunas? Tamaguna. When you see a person who is very lazy, who barely kind of thinks about anything, who just lives a life of bare necessities, like gets up, eats, wears any clothes, doesn't care about the surroundings. That kind of a person has a predominantly tamoguna. A person who's very active and does stuff, but is not, he is materially active, but does not have too much of inner speculation or inner reflections. Such a person has what we call the rajoguna. He acts fast. And then we have the sattva guna, which would what we would have characterized for all of us who are on the spiritual path, because we are not only doing things correctly in the outside world, trying to live the path of dharma. We are also internally constantly reflecting on what we do, how do we do things, and we learn the art of discrimination, which is very, very important on the path of spiritual life. Because once we know what is good, what is bad, the cause of why something happens, then we immediately start changing ourselves. So when we know, if I hurt that person, I am creating a bad karma that in one of my future lives or in this lifetime, I will have to face the effect of that. I'm going to become selfish in a nice way, and I'm not going to hurt the other person. So that is the next level. Higher than all that is like being like Gajrat Swamigal, who absolutely had nothing negative about anybody. Bad or good, everybody was the same to him. That is the level we all want to reach. That is the level where, all the great rishis are, and all the great Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, Yogananda. For them, there was no discrimination between right and wrong, because all they saw was the divinity in that person. So we must understand that as spiritual aspirants, we have to use discrimination. We want to become aware of everything that we do. And based on that awareness, based on the knowledge of why things happen, change the way we act, and then walk on the path of spiritual life. So, what is it that can help us? Meditation, because in meditation, we learn to control our breath. We learn how to focus on something, and the more we focus on something, and the more we become, remain steadfast in a particular level, then our breathing becomes more relaxed and we become more calm and we become more aware. And each day that awareness increases. And so when we know that we are making a mistake, we will try to control it. And even if we fail, sometimes we do repeatedly, then we still persevere to change that. That trying every day to change is more important than forcing yourself to do something and then controlling your desire and then suddenly losing everything and doing everything wrong at once. So Appa says it's important to do it, persevere in whatever you're trying to do to change. Go ahead, sister.
However, you cannot meditate without first acquiring knowledge. That is the reason that meditation and knowledge have to go together. How does one gain knowledge? For the most part, it is through books, satsang, and gurus. However, there are some that are beyond this. They connect directly to cosmic knowledge and become jnanis without books or gurus. Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, Ramana Maharishi, and many such gurus of Kali Yuga belong to this category.
So what
Now let us,
Appa, oh sorry, what Appa
yeah,
says here is so very important. And this is something that every guru of the modern age must remember. He says, you cannot meditate without first acquiring knowledge. See, many meditation classes have popped up all over the world. The modern world, people are so stressed, they want to go to a meditation class. And what happens? The first thing they go, they sit down, and as we have discussed before, they're told to sit down in a certain position, they're told to keep their hands in a certain position, they're told how to breathe, and they're taken beautifully through a beautiful mindfulness meditation class. Then they come out, what do? They continue to do what they're doing every day. So that effect of the meditation does not remain with them for a long time. Why? Because there is no knowledge imparted during those sessions. The Appa says it's so important to impart knowledge. Knowledge and meditation have to go hand in hand. And that is why he has given us Agastya Valipadu, because Agastya Valipadu is nothing but knowledge of righteous life, on why and wherefores of creation, why karma, why this life, what is the purpose of life. And it is not relevant only, Agastya Valipadu is not a path in itself. It is a what do you say, philosophy that can be activated to anything that you do in life, whether you're an atheist or you belong to a different religion or you follow a guru. All that is said in Agastya Valipadu applies to every human being who's born on this earth. So what Appa is trying to say is just follow all this, understand why you're here, understand why creation. Because once you understand all these basic things, then how you react, how you act, everything starts changing naturally. And when you do that, then you've created a firm foundation of the spiritual life. Think about why a lot of great spiritual leaders of today go forward in what they're doing, acquire a lot of siddhis, and that is possible. Even the worst possible person can acquire a lot of siddhis by sitting in meditation, focusing, doing certain techniques. Yeah, they can attain all the siddhis, but then what happens? They fall prey to lust or something like that, and they go all the way back down to the bottom. Why? Because the first thing that they needed, or the idea of why things happen, what is lust, what is greed, the basic things of life, righteousness, these things have not been built, have not been made into a strong foundation on the spiritual life. It's like building a 11-story building, constructing a 11-story building without putting a proper foundation. You can keep going up and down until the day comes when the foundation is so weak that the whole building collapses. So that is why Appa says, acquire knowledge. Acquire knowledge and when you start walking on the spiritual path and meditate. Knowledge and meditation go hand in hand. And every guru of today needs to do that. They need to talk about why these things are happening. And in one of the book discourses, Appa talks about it. He says the world is at the brink of extinction. It is leading to a time when everything is going to go so bad. But which guru is telling the sishyas that, or the people who come to the satsangs that, hey, humanity needs to stand up and take stock of what is going on in this world. That is not happening yet. Even in the world, the leaders are talking about things only, but nothing is really being done in the way it needs to be done to make human life better in this world, to save Mother Earth. That is not happening. But can we do as individuals? We can talk about it. We can try to lead that kind of life where we take care of ourselves and the environment and everything around us. So little by little, we can do what Appa is saying. But as we say, do not go into meditation directly without knowing the whys and wherefores of creation and very reason why you're born on this earth. Go ahead, Sister Sumati.
Yeah. Now let us examine your question. There is an atonement for every karma. Your question is whether there is a relationship between a specific bad karma and the atonement for it. The fruit of karma is just a punishment to help the person understand that the actions committed by him are wrong. This helps him understand that he must not commit such actions again. In such an instance, punishment may be in any form. It is not necessarily the repetition of the deed. In some cases, however, there is a correlation between the karma and the atonement.
So this is
Let
again
us
very important because I used to think, well, if a person is suffering because of this, it's probably because the person created the same kind of karma against somebody else in his previous life. And Appa says that is not true. That is not the case all the time. So you know, and he also says there is atonement for every karma. Now, what do we mean by atonement? Atonement is not going and breaking 100 coconuts or wearing a ring that has a particular stone or going and dipping in Ganges for 10 times. No, that is not atonement. Atonement is actually experiencing the effect of the karma that we have set into motion a long time ago with the right attitude and paying off that karmic debt. And so he says, sometimes there is a relationship, but it is not always the case. And why he says this, we will understand as we go further. Go ahead, sister.
Let us take some examples. A person is responsible for the death of another. While dying, the victim is aware of the person who has killed him, and that thought carries over to the next incarnation. Without his knowledge, the victim may try to take revenge on the person. Take another example. A person kills a sacred animal like a cow. Such a person has to go through suffering owing to diseases in the next life. These are what we call Nagadosha, Sarpadosha, or Stri dosha, limiting factors or those that cause problems. These manifest as suffering.
So once again, upon saying, giving an example, okay, somebody kills somebody, okay, and then the person who's been harmed has that in his causal body. The thought is with him, and when he comes back and meets that person again in the next life, he wants to take revenge on him. He's angry with him. So if you look back at all the relationships and all the people you come across in your life, we must remember that we have seen most of them in our previous lives. There is a reason why they're all coming back and interacting with us in our life in different forms. Sometimes the most important relationships are with the people that we have harmed the most. A mother may have a son or a daughter who hates the mother, and they don't know why. There's so much hatred because the mother in the previous life must have, in one of the previous life, might have done something to harm that particular soul. So there is that anger. But now in this life, the mother, because of the fact that she is a mother, and it's the nature of mothers to love children, cannot get angry with the child. So there is atonement for her karma when she is not reacting to what the child does. and, reacts kindly and with understanding. So in the same way, we, see somebody on the street, or we meet somebody and without even knowing we have this anger towards them or fear. It's all because of past life interactions with those souls. So we must always remember that when something happens to us repeatedly by one person, that is probably because we both have created karmic interaction between each other. And the only way to dissipate it is to love everybody, no matter what. How much ever they try to hurt us, we have to absorb it and let it go and not react, because reacting causes further karma. Go ahead. And also he's talking about, Naga dosha, Sarpa dosha, Stri dosha. And we all think, based on what our current understanding is, oh, we killed the snake, we killed this. No, he just says it's probably something that is, any dosha is like a blemish based on something bad we did to something more divine in nature. And so that is why he says here that it usually comes as, diseases or, obstacles on your path of doing something. So those are basically the karmic reactions. And here we can understand that that particular karma of doing a harm to something which is divine is manifesting as a disease. It is not exactly correlated to, the action as an equal action. It is that action causes this reaction, and that is what we are going through. And so with that, we have to stop today, because the next thing starts a whole new line of thought. And I'm going to say thank you, and we will meet again next week and continue this interesting topic.